Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and of course, PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So, wherever you get a podcast at, I should say, find us on there. If we're not on there, let me know. We'll get on there, but we're on every major one, so shouldn't be too much of an issue, but if we're not, let me know. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast to stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like and our dope giveaways. I'm your host, as always, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, back in the saddle this week, my partner in crime, Mike Peapack. Mike, what is good, my friend? What is going on, my friend? And of course, what have you been playing? And I want you to, first and foremost, I want you to tell me about the old crack pipe we're back on.
Well,
first, how are you doing? It's been a week since we did the show together, but
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Good. Are you asking for me about Hunt?
I am asking for you about Hunt.
I've been thoroughly enjoying it. I definitely go on these binges with that game where I get way too into it, and I know when it comes to me, sometimes my obsession leads to basically, it's hard for other people to imitate or feel that same way towards games. I will usually, unfortunately, beat that dead horse a long time, long after you and Adam have already exhausted that itch. So, I will say that I have been hitting it pretty hard within the past, couple of days. I've been really spending a lot of time on that game. I just go through these phases where sometimes I hop on, play that game, and it could be one hunt, which is what's so ironic about it and what I think it does so well. It's a lot like the sport of golf where you could have the worst day golfing ever and then goddamn well you could shoot the worst round you've shot in a year, but that number 18 you're going to hit a couple of beautiful shots and birdie it and you're going to be like, fuck, I'm hooked again. I'm coming back out the next day. And it's kind of the same way with Hunt where it just takes one super good hunt and then all of a sudden it's like I'm hooked all the way back in. I've been thoroughly enjoying it. And again, I've been, when I talk about this game in particular on this pod, I've spent a lot of time talking about what it is as far as a battle royale, and how it feels as far as the gunplay is concerned. And again, I'm like double, triple, quadrupling down on the fact that the gunplay on that game is just so satisfying to hit shots on, because headshots aren't necessarily impossible to hit, but they're very difficult to hit. And I love the fact that basically, because there's no real armor as far as protection, you can, I've been finding myself using a shotgun with just a Caldwell conversion pistol side, which is a compact round, not the Caldwell uppercut, which is a rifle or a long round. I've been finding myself being able to outshoot people who have scopes or who have rifles with the pistol because there's no protection. So I've been able to kind of utilize that, and it's been really satisfying. And, just hitting headshots, killing people in that game is like a super satisfying feeling. And it's one that, I constantly find myself wanting to go back to again and again. And, that's no different this time as far as Hunt Showdown's concerned. We've been having a lot of fun with it. Been pretty successful, but we've also just been focusing on trying to focus on the PvP elements of the game, which, again, who can really blame us? That game's PvP is super enjoyable, in my humble opinion. And outside of that, of course, playing the dead game that is Halo Infinite, and, I've been high on this game, and I've been low on this game, and I don't know that I've ever been lower on this game. So I will just say that the silence is deafening from 343, and it's super concerning, and it's becoming a bigger concern of mine than I previously, thought of. There's one thing to release a game and go on a vacation for holiday, It's a whole nother to be, rehiring sandbox leads like a month and a half after the game releases, because that just happens to be when your old sandbox leads contract was up. But I don't want to, talk about that too much, because I'm sure people are probably pretty sick of hearing me talk about Halo Infinite in a good or a bad way. And I've talked about it at ad nauseum at this point. So without further ado, I would love to pass the torch over to you. Why don't you tell me what you've been up to recently? Because I know the listeners out there, they hear what I play. I play the same shit every week. I'm a creature of habit. But you are always the beacon of hope for those listeners that want to hear about different experiences. So why don't you share that now with our listeners?
To be honest, my
don't tell me you're in the same boat as me now.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you.
The listeners listen every week to what you and Molly are playing, and if you guys aren't playing something, then we're in shit, and then we're in deep shit with those guys.
To be honest, we haven't really played anything this past week.
Okay.
We've been catching up more on like TV and shit like that. Like we finished Archive 81, which was okay. It wasn't too bad. I know she wants to get me into watching Yellow Jackets, which I will eventually, but she already finished that. And then what are we? Oh, we just started the new season of The Sinner, but I'm also wanting to get into Ozarks, because I know you've obviously preached that up a lot. And as a big Breaking Bad fan, and I do like Jason Bateman, I think he's pretty decent actor, so I would like to get into that. But
just wait till you see him. It's almost like, I mean, for me, having seen all of Ozark, it's almost equivalent to like Walter White. Like I always thought he was a super good actor. But I was never like, he never like blew my fucking tits off. You know what I mean? But Jason Bateman's effort in Ozark is similar to I forget the gentleman's name who played Walter White, but
Bryan Cranston.
Bryan Cranston. But you get the point. Like, both of those guys absolutely blew my tits off in their renditions on their TV shows. So I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, it's just finding time to get to it eventually. But for things that I've played, now that I think about it, I've actually played a decent amount of stuff. So off the top, just looking at recently played PUBG. You, myself, Adam, Kyle have all kind of jumped in and played that here and there. We had fun with it one night, and then played it like 2 nights later, and we were all like, no, it's time to move on.
I think we just played it that first night way too long.
Right. And
because Kyle stayed up till like 12:30, which never happens.
Right, yeah. And he was jonesing for it. And we were having like a good time for the majority of it, but it just like most battle royales, there comes a time and point when you get on a really cold streak and you're beating your head off against a wall and nothing's going right and you need to just kind of step away. But we were having fun at times with it. And then we just kind of fell off of it. But no, definitely what you're saying. Like, it's very rare that Kyle like games for more than like an hour. So when he does, like, I do want to take advantage of that for him. But yeah, so PUBG kind of in and out of that a little bit. Finally picked up Inscription. I know Adam's been very much, standing on the soapbox for this one, and definitely talking a lot about this game and talking it up. I'm usually typically not a big card game player in terms of video games. I just never been a big, like, I'm not a big deck builder fan. It just never really clicked with me. Like, in actual, like, I grew up playing Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And all that shit. So, like, I like card games, but it never really translated over to gaming too much. But except for, like, Hearthstone and things like that, I put time in, and Elder Scrolls Legends, RIP. But Inscription is so much more than just a card game, and I'm still very early on in the game. Like, I've only played a couple hours of it. The twists haven't been spoiled for me, though. I could tell what it is, kind of, but the true, like, twists within the game haven't been spoiled. It's freaky, it's atmospheric, and the card game, while it is kind of the main focus of, at least right now in the first act, of how you approach the game, it really is kind of secondary, because realistically, when you're playing, it's this mesh of like choose your own adventure roguelite. It's really hard to explain. It's one of those games that's really hard to explain unless you sit down and play it. And I don't recommend, like, I would want people to go in blind playing this because that's the best way to play it. Hell, that's the best way to play a lot of games anymore. Just with the saturation of like marketing and shit like that. But talking to you, Deathloop. But the thing with this game that flourishes so much is its mystique. Like, when you get into this game, it doesn't hold your hand. It is very much, you have to, almost in a way, like, I hate using this because I'm going to talk about this game in a minute, but it almost uses the From Software, like, Soulsborne approach, where you get into this game, it doesn't hold your hand much, it doesn't give you a backstory, you kind of learn about the world as you go through it, and kind of take in, you know, the environmental storytelling that's there, and trying to figure out who's across the table from you playing, and who's kind of conducting this whole thing. Are you really being forced here on your own? You know, what are all the, you know, the map keeps ever changing, and should I choose a different route to go through this? Because, like I said, it has roguelike elements to it, so if you die once, you start over kind of thing. But not in the sense of, it doesn't feel as punishing as, like, which the punishment in Hades, I feel, is really balanced. So it's like, that scratches a certain itch for people, where this doesn't feel like this. It feels like much more of a, you know, you are going to die. And not that, you know, in roguelite, it's very much almost like a Dark Souls, where you're going to die, get used to that idea, but it's more so learning each time you go. And this more so in a narrative approach, where you're wanting to figure out the nuances of the story, even if it means dying to figure those out. So I really recommend it so far. I'm pissed I didn't get a chance to really check it out over Christmas, whenever we were on break and whatnot, but I'm really happy to jump into it now. I just gotta figure out some time to eventually sit down and just kind of like play it in a day kind of thing. Because I don't think it's that long. I think it's like somewhere between like 6 to 8 hours or something like that. And I'm already like, you know, 3 hours into it or whatever. So just kind of sitting down and figuring that out. And then, like I mentioned, kind of getting back into Dark Souls a little bit. I have yet to be a Soulsborne game. I mean, that's been I've been very vocal about that on the show a lot of times, but I really have an appreciation for those games. And I think it's because I'm just, for the first time ever, I am probably going to pick up a Soulsborne game day one with Elden Ring when it comes out. Just because I think this is finally going to be that true, like, where the Venn diagram of what I like and what Soulsborne, or what From Software offers from the types of games that it makes. Whenever we're speaking Soulsborne, that is, that finally we're going to have that real, like, Elden Ring might be that true overlap of fluid combat, a dense world, being able to get lost in, but also to more so environmental storytelling, and you trying to figure out, you know, you're just being dropped into this world almost and trying to figure out what's going on there and whatnot. But I've been wanting to kind of scratch that itch, but not too much, because I don't want to be burnt out on the Soulsborne formula, because it can burn you out of just kind of getting your shit pushed 24/7. Like, so, but it's like that. It's a really good, I think, reinforcer to sometimes. Like, I think it's such a stark contrast to a lot of things I've been playing, because I've been playing a lot of first-person shooters and competitive multiplayer games like Infinite and whatnot. And when I get frustrated from that, I think it's a good stark contrast to get in and play something like that is very much more, I don't want to say stress relieving, but it's very much more, I have more associated tasks of getting through, learning how to beat this boss and doing that, compared to something that is ever changing, like, you know, Hunt, Infinite, whatever, you know, PUBG, you name it, a competitive multiplayer shooter. That kind of helps me center and kind of like I don't want to say break up the monotony, but gives me a nice a nice fresh breath of air. There we go. Compared to being so kind of like, not sweaty, but like, you know, wanting to get solo queue Onyx and things like that, sometimes you just need to walk away from it. And I think games like, you know, From Software games are really good at that. which I'm surprised that's not something you've like wanted to play on stream before, Mike, because I feel like that's like very much up in your alley. Like that'd be something you'd want to play. I don't know.
You're talking about like a Soulsborne game in general?
Like Dark Souls, Sekiro, well, Bloodborne, but that's on PlayStation. But like any of those, I just feel like that'd be something that's like right up your alley.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes whenever I've tried to give one of those games a go, whether it be Sekiro or whatever, I've just always been kind of busy doing other stuff, and not even like real life stuff, but I've just been busy like competing in an esport, and I don't want to sit there and be miserable, like not miserable, but
right,
banging my head against the wall trying to get better at a video game, in a professional sense, and then my leisure game is going to also make me want to kill someone. You know what I mean? Like I've never been that type of person. If I'm going to like cleanse the palate, like yeah, Hunt is probably a little bit crazy for me to like get into in my downtime, but like I'm also playing some NHL here and there, like be a pro, just to palate cleanse. Or the next game I kind of have queued up for stream is The Long Dark. I really need to play that game.
Great game.
And I really want to play it very soon. So that might even be like a tonight or a tomorrow night type situation for the stream. So that's the next game I'm looking at. But I've always kind of just tried to keep it light in my off time, if you will.
That's weird because I looked on the schedule and it seems like there's something else on the schedule that you're playing tonight.
What's that?
What do you think?
What is tonight? Thursday? I don't know. What am I playing tonight? Hunt?
There's a bear shit in the woods?
Okay, so yeah, I'll be streaming Hunt tonight.
No, I'm just kidding. But I was waiting for you to be like... Well,
but not really.
Yeah, but not really, yeah. Anyway, so Mike, let's jump into the show this week before we get too long in the tooth. I feel like every other week's just going to be like somebody getting acquired. Even if it isn't Microsoft, even if it's whoever. I mean, fuck, Wordle just got acquired by the New York Times the other day. So yeah, it's fucking like anybody's up. I mean, it is like it's Yager playing for the Flyers. It's fucking A-Rod going to the Yankees. You name it. Like anybody can go anywhere, kind of thing. So, but I don't want to say super surprising news because to me that it isn't necessarily super surprising given their past relationship and everything, but to an extent it is kind of surprising, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit. But Sony pulled out the checkbook, or is announcing that they have plans to pull out the checkbook to acquire Bungie for $3.6 billion. So this article, the write-up, comes from Brendan Sinclair over at gamesindustry.biz, as always. Link in the description, go over there, give Brendan a click and everything like that. But just to kind of set the stage for everything going on. But Sony Interactive Entertainment today announced a deal to acquire Bungie for $3.6 billion. The latest in a string of big-ticket consolidation deals in the gaming industry. After the deal closes, Bungie will be, quote, an independent subsidiary of SIE run by a board of directors consisting of current CEO and chairman Pete Parsons and the rest of the studio's current management team. Sony has said Bungie will remain a multi-platform studio with the option, quote, to self-publish and reach players whenever they choose to play or wherever they choose to play. At present, the studio is working on maintaining Destiny 2, expanding the Destiny franchise, and working on a new IP as well. Quote, we've had a strong partnership with Bungie since the inception of the Destiny franchise, and I couldn't be more thrilled to officially welcome the studio to the PlayStation family, said SIE President and CEO Jim Ryan. Quote, this is an important step in our strategy to expand the reach of PlayStation to a much wider audience. We understand how vital Bungie's community is to the studio and look forward to supporting them as they remain independent and continue to grow. Like Bungie, our community is core to PlayStation's DNA, and our shared passion for the gamer and building the best place to play will now evolve even further. Parsons said SIE supported the studio's dual goal of making generation-spanning entertainment while staying creatively independent. Quote, both Bungie and SIE believe that that game worlds are only the beginning of what our IP will become, Parsons said. Our original our original universes, there we go, have immense potential, and with SIE's support, we will propel Bungie into becoming a global multimedia entertainment company dedicated to delivering on our creative vision. The deal caps off a massive January for games industry acquisitions. Take-Two announced an agreement to acquire Zynga for roughly $12.7 billion on January 11th, and Microsoft followed up with a $68.7 billion deal for Activision Blizzard a week later. So, and actually some new news kind of came out, that new, as the kids say, came out just recently, a couple hours ago. Part of that deal, Sony is spending $1.2 billion to keep Destiny 2 devs from leaving. When Sony revealed, this comes from over at Kotaku by Ethan Gotch, as always, link in the description, yada yada, you know the deal. When Sony revealed its surprise $3.6 billion deal to buy Bungie, it was clear that the PS5 manufacturer was paying a premium for the original Halo, or creators of Halo, and now Destiny 2. Now the company has revealed roughly a third of that price tag is actually to pay Bungie developers so they don't immediately leave the studio. Quote, approximately one third of the $3.6 billion acquisition consideration consists primarily of deferred payments to employee shareholders, conditional upon their continued employment and other retention incentives, Sony announced in yesterday's earnings presentation, as first reported by Tweaktown. The approximately $1.2 billion will be paid out over several years, with an estimated 2/3 to be paid within the first 2 years following the acquisition's official closing date. Sony is paying for people as much for Sony is paying for the people as much as for Destiny 2. So, like I said, it's not necessarily super surprising. And just to kind of throw this out there, a lot of people obviously, hey, this is a response. This is, we've been waiting for Sony to make a response, a response to the Blizzard deal, the Activision deal. A lot of people naturally, I think, want to go for that off the cuff right away, trigger kind of like thought process to go off of that. But let's be clear. Deals like this, deals like the Blizzard acquisition, deals like, or Activision as well, the Take-Two Zynga acquisition, deals like the Bethesda acquisition, the whatever you want to, any of these big, large-scale billion-dollar deals, multi-million-dollar deals, whatever you want to call it, they take months to do. This isn't a hey, 2 weeks ago, let's pick up the phone. Jim Ryan picks up the phone, calls Pete Parsons, calls Luke Smith over there, even though Luke's more creative. I just want to give a shout out to Luke Smith because I think he does great work over at Bungie and for a long time.
Just cuts a check for the amount
right,
needed.
No big deal. Exactly. That is not the case. And I will be honest, Jeff Keighley, who I believe does have an idea or heard rumors of things going on, put out there like, hey, I'm hearing this isn't the last that we're going to hear from PlayStation and other studio acquisition or just acquisitions in general in gaming, which I definitely agree. I think this is, it's only gonna just keep condensing. I think long term, which could be a good thing or a bad thing, and we'll kind of talk about that. But nobody really knows until outside of a handful of executives, probably in some situations, maybe the people who are being employed, but that's not always the case, and a lot of lawyers, and that's it. No shareholders, no anything like that. Like, we're talking a board of executives, the CEO, the head of the studios, and a bunch of lawyers. That's it. So if you want to think of this being a response to anything, you can maybe theoretically say this is a response to the Bethesda deal, maybe, because we're talking, 16 months out or whatever, or 18 months even, like, maybe something like that, but this isn't necessarily the response people want to get. And people are also probably thinking, why the fuck are we talking about a PlayStation acquisition? Let's be honest. Bungie is, what's the word I'm thinking of?
Intrinsically tied?
Intrinsically, there we go. Big words, Mike. You're a lot better with them than I am. Intrinsically tied to Microsoft, Xbox, the lineage of that. It's almost like the conversation we've had multiple times. It's hard to tell the story, in my opinion. It's hard to tell the story of baseball without Barry Bonds in it. It's hard to tell the story of Microsoft without Bungie in it, obviously. So, and not to mention, just looking up some of the numbers that I believe, hold on now. Where was it? Where the hell did it go? Anyway, I'll pull it up. Over Tom Wilson from over at The Verge brought up something at one point about the number of players playing. But Destiny 2 is one of the biggest products that is on the Xbox platform and in the Xbox ecosystem. And it's really interesting that, you know, this deal took place for the sole fact of, not that I'm saying it's surprising, but it's interesting that after so many times, and granted, they're saying, hey, we want to keep our independence. We want to, this is everything with that. So many times, this is what, the third time, I believe? Well, no, second time that they've been acquired, but, you know, third time that they've gone, I hate using this for a lack of a better phrase, but gotten in bed with a large scale corporation to do their either publishing or help run their projects in terms of, you know, getting them out the door and whatnot. With Microsoft, then leaving, you know, for after so long, saying, after post Halo, saying, hey, we don't want to be the Halo studio anymore. We want to go independent. We want our independence back. That's important to us. Cool. They do that. Then they get under Activision, and more, the longer it goes with their 10-year publishing deal, or, you know, quote unquote 10-year publishing deal, that them saying, you know, hey, this isn't working for us. There's more. They're asking more. They're, you know, in theory, wanting more creative control over this and yada, yada. Hey, we want our independence back. They get out of that. Hey, we could self-publish. We have enough money to do that. Yada, yada. It all goes back to independence. And while it sounds great on paper that this is going to work out on a lot of ways, Mike, I kind of want to get your ideas on, does this sound like this could potentially go back to being the same thing for Bungie? I mean, it's great because that means we're still going to, you know, people who own an Xbox or a PC or whatever are still going to be able to play Destiny 2 long-term on these platforms. And from what it sounds like, they're not going to be gatekept from content, knock on wood, because that pisses me off more than just, you know, games being exclusive. But where do you think this kind of stands and shakes out? Like, is this something that, obviously, one, were you expecting this, or are you surprised by this? And two, I guess really, like, what does this mean now for Bungie, Microsoft, Sony, all just gaming in general right now, when yet another big player like this kind of comes off the board?
I think it's definitely an eye-opening thing. It's not something that is totally unexpected, obviously. I think back whenever the acquisition of Bethesda went through, I think the episode we had on that, I think you had brought Bungie's name up as like maybe a possibility. A possibility for them being one that Microsoft had eyed up, and then I even threw out the troll of like, yeah, how troll would it be for Microsoft to buy Bungie and say, okay, your job is to fix Halo?
that was the big joke too. Like the past like couple days that like people were kind of like bagging on the Halo community of like, well, maybe Microsoft will acquire Bungie and they can make another Halo game. Oh, like that was the big joke the other day.
Yeah, and it definitely makes sense. And I think you're the one that brought it up that like, would Microsoft eye Bungie? And I think, you know, we kind of all talked about it, or we both talked about it, and I think we both agreed that it would probably be a good idea. And I want to just second and just briefly touch on, like, obviously this isn't a knee-jerk reaction to Microsoft buying Activision. Like, you know, we already talked about that. But this is probably proof that Microsoft probably... I think you'd be foolish to not think that Microsoft didn't reach out to Bungie and ask what the price would be. And then whatever the conversation, whatever happened between Microsoft and Bungie obviously wasn't satisfactory to Microsoft and they didn't pull the trigger on the deal. Maybe there wasn't even a deal on the table. Maybe Microsoft reached out, Bungie said no, we went down that path before. I don't think so, and hung up the phone. But, you know, quite frankly, who Bungie's been acquired by and owned previous to now, it's hard to believe Microsoft would be any worse than their last overlord, if you will. Now, obviously, paying hush money essentially to employees, saying like, "Hey, you guys better stick around, or else, you know, we're paying you all this money. Here's this agreement, and if you leave, you're going to forfeit all that money." Like, that's obviously less than ideal, and I don't think anyone who, you know, is worried about workers' rights or is is pro worker should be really thrilled that you see employees of a company kind of getting paid to stick around, which would, obviously it's not against their will and they're not being held at gunpoint or anything crazy.
Right.
But still, it does feel like they're being held hostage a little bit. And, from Bungie standpoint, I don't know what Sony sold them that made them go down the exact same path they've been down before. I'd be curious to hear, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall during their discussions, but it does seem a little bit crazy that, here we are just a few years later, and now instead of being an independent, company, they're now again acquired. As far as what does this mean going down the road for Microsoft, Sony, Valve, I think it's, something where we talked about it, a few times, but all of a sudden everyone was crying like, Microsoft has no games. What's the point? Why would anyone buy an Xbox One? Why would anyone buy anything Microsoft related? They have no games to get us. Then all of a sudden the conversation became, wow, it's a monopoly. Wow, they're getting everybody. And it's like, okay, well, does Microsoft not have any games or are they a monopoly? Which is it?
Right.
And it's funny to see, Microsoft didn't cry and didn't complain when the Xbox One didn't sell that well. They didn't, they didn't do anything like that. They just, stuck their nose, got their nose down, put their head down and stuck to their grind and they had a vision and, they ended up following through on that vision. I think there's still going to be a lot of indie developers out there because there's still going to be small teams that want to focus on certain things. Like, look at the guys who make Phasmophobia. Like, I don't think that those 3 independent individuals that are, working together, I don't know what their agreement is, but I don't think they are technically a development studio. They're still 3 individuals. And I would say they're probably doing pretty well for themselves. They have a couple of, they have some big content creators. They have a pretty niche but hardcore following. I'd say that the people like those guys over there are doing great for themselves. So there's no point in them doing anything else. But, that's not to say that, if someone doesn't come knocking, if they're not going to want to go to, a more full-time or, a different company. But as far as a company that comes to mind that, might be in the crosshairs, and of course, we're like starting to run out of these, but like someone like Ubisoft, maybe they would be someone that might have a crosshair on them for a certain company.
Yeah.
I look for now Nintendo is usually pretty, not arrogant. Actually, I would probably use the word arrogant. They're pretty arrogant.
They very much, I look at it almost like a sports team where they are very much, when they're constructing their roster, quote unquote, they very much like to build from within. Like,
oh yeah,
you will hear about acquisitions like them acquiring the studio. I can't remember for the life of me what the name was of the studio that handled the newest Luigi's Mansion game. They finally, for a long time, they were just almost like Insomniac and Sony were for a long time of just, hey, they're a second party studio for the most part. They only work with us, but we don't exclusively own them, but their content is traditionally on our devices. And then finally, I think it was last year or 2020, one of the two, they acquired them just because it made natural sense. But traditionally, you're seeing a lot of, Nintendo, we're talking Nintendo development and research studios that you're seeing, where there are a lot of Japanese studios, not to mention then a couple like Retro Studio and who was the one out of Milan who just did Metroid Dread? I can't remember it for the life of me, but just in general, that you traditionally see them more from within compared to a Sony, a Microsoft, where you're seeing much more large-scale acquisitions, more glitz and glam, almost like more so the Red Sox, Yankees, somebody like a large-scale, a large market baseball team.
Right, and I just think, the only other company that really, to me, just off the top of my head, that I would look at is someone like Ubisoft. And, EA might come to mind for some people, but you got to remember, they're still stacking so much money. I doubt that they would be one. Epic was one, obviously was a part of Microsoft whenever, they were making Gears of War. Obviously they have their own things now, so I don't know that they would necessarily be one that's in the crosshairs. You could see maybe someone like Crytek, with the hard work that they've done with Hunt, that could be one, I suppose. But I think it's a net positive because Sony is beginning to start to allow you to play their games on PC, which I think is a logical change. And I think I don't want to credit Microsoft for it because obviously Microsoft isn't like, I don't bow down to Microsoft, but this is what good competition does. It breeds change, it breeds improvement. And I would say that, Sony offering their games on PC is a direct response to Microsoft doing that. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to say like, oh, Big Daddy Microsoft, we make an Xbox podcast, so I'm bowing down. It's just like, it's just common sense. Like if people are
naturally, they
see the numbers that, Game Pass is doing, they think, man, how do I get a little bit of slice of pie?
Right.
And as a Microsoft fan and as an Xbox fan, I'd love to play God of War on PC. That's probably the only way I would ever give that game a chance because I'm sure as hell not spending my money on a PS5 and I'm not getting a PS4. So if I can do it on a PC, I'll sign me up. Whatever the subscription fee is.
Which everyone should, because that game's fucking fantastic.
Right. And whatever the subscription fee is, I'm down. Like, I'll pay for it just to play some of those PlayStation exclusives that everyone's been ranting and raving and foaming at the mouth about. I'm all here for it. But as a gamer, as a pure, like, just straight up gamer who, if I wasn't on a podcast that was Microsoft, just as a straight up gamer, I'd say, it's kind of exciting because you get a lot of money behind these studios that have traditionally done really solid work.
Well, and that's the biggest thing that, sorry, not to interrupt you, but that's the biggest thing that I take, like, I don't want to say like, oh, I take pride in this or covering. If I'm covering these large stories as somebody within the media, like we are doing, quote unquote, the media. I mean, let's just be real. We're, clearly high class media personnel here, but
just 100% like, it's our hobby.
Right. But very much so that I do take, it is great whenever you see, Bungie come out and say during this, the biggest change you are going to see as a Destiny player is content getting to you in a much more streamlined fashion, from the sense of we are able to now not worry about, not that they ever had to worry, but without a doubt, we're able to, whatever it'll be, double our employment. That we're going to be able to get even more talented developers behind our work to get it to you in a much more streamlined fashion and even better than before, because we'll have more great talent working in our studio. And that's something that, like, I don't think is preached enough from these big acquisitions, that you see a Microsoft gobble up somebody or buy somebody. And not that Activision Blizzard was hurting for money by any stretch of the imagination. I'm going to get into that after you finish up, Mike. But you got to think too. There's companies like Sony. There's companies like EA and whatnot. Microsoft is tech. Like, realistically, it's Microsoft and Apple for the most part. But Microsoft, when you think of personal computers and personal computer technology, it is Microsoft behind everything. Windows is the most popular platform for the average consumer. I mean, bar none. It's just what most people who aren't super high-end tech savvy that, may have a Linux or something like that running on it, they're getting Windows on their computer. They're having in every office workplace, 99% of them have Microsoft Office. Like, they have so many more revenue streams outside of that compared to a Sony or somebody like that who technically has more gaming revenue, but that doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, gaming is one of their most popular revenues to go through, and not that it isn't for Microsoft, but Microsoft's, like, they're just so much more broader reaching than so many of these other companies. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'll clean up the rest of it.
No, you're good.
But go ahead, Mike.
No, and that's also a good point, that like you might see some of your favorite studios might be, kind of hurting for money. And they might shutter their doors, where someone like Microsoft or even Sony could come through and purchase them, and that would guarantee that you're going to get one of those game from that company that you might not have gotten otherwise because they were going to go bankrupt. And, that's also something that could come from this. But obviously, I'd be remiss to not state the obvious that you're probably correct if you're a Bungie fan and a Destiny fan to be a little concerned of the freedom of, the people that make your game. That's always something that kind of plagued Blizzard, plagued Activision. And I think it's something that Sony, not even Sony in general, but now at this point, Bungie and Sony could run into that because now you've been paid hush money essentially to make Destiny 2, where it's like if one of those people wants to progress in their career or move on from making Destiny, now you have a gun to your head for the next however long the agreement was that they signed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that part is concerning as part of just like labor relations. But overall, I think this is a huge win for gaming in general. And it's a big win for, let's face it, even though we cover, we always talk about how we cover Microsoft and this and that and the other, but this is a huge win for Sony. Bungie's not, Bungie does not equal Bethesda or Activision Blizzard, or even Blizzard or Activision on their own. I would say all of those are, above, Bungie, but when Microsoft has made the moves that they've made recently, again, this is a move that was a long time in the works. It's not a response, but this is a big pickup for Sony, and it's nothing to really, be like, it's nothing to, lift your, like,
shake your head
nose up at. Yeah. Like, this is a really solid move for Sony going forward, and I think it's gonna, do good things for them as a company. And I think Microsoft is probably already has other things in the works, and they've had other things in the works. What's next?
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And I think when we talk about consolidation within gaming, I think we're going to see more of these style deals kind of form and take place more so than, hey, exclusive. Sure, there'll be exclusive content that comes out in some form for Destiny or now this is just me. If I was Microsoft, I'd be and buying Bungie, I'd be doing the same exact thing. But I would want on every PlayStation 5 that is shipped, every PlayStation 5 that's shipped on the box, you should have includes Destiny 2, where you could put that on there now and say, like, where it's just pre-installed on the console when you get it. Every console should have that. Greg Miller brought that up, and I instantly thought of, I'm like, that's brilliant. That's why you pay for these kind of acquisitions, because of, and like I was saying, let me bring it up from Tom Moore, and did I just close that out? God damn it. Oh, here it is. Tom Warren from The Verge, like I was saying earlier, tweeted during the Destiny deal, or the Bungie deal. If you're wondering how big Destiny 2 is for Sony, 860,000 players played Destiny 2 yesterday, at a slow point in a season about to end later this month. There were 275,000 on Xbox, 355,000 on PlayStation, 224,000 on Steam, and 5,390 on Stadia. But the fact that Xbox has more than Steam, one of the biggest platforms, PC platform, obviously, PC being one of the biggest platforms supported now, shows you how big of a deal that is. That, granted, and this is why I say I think we're going to see more of these deals as we go on, that a Bungie for so long wanted their independence. Clearly that does, mean something to them if they're putting that information out saying, no, we're standing hard on that, we're X, Y, and Z, we're doing this because we want to have our independence. But if you're Sony, you're cool making, like, they don't need to shore up exclusives to get people to play on their platform right now. And that's where, obviously, Microsoft's still playing from behind, because Sony can just say, no, we're the home of the single-player, narrative, third-person action adventure game that you want to play. The big blockbuster game that you want to play, we're the home of that. That sells itself for the most part on its own. And for a whole generation, they had the marketing deals of, with Bungie and Destiny, with MLB being the sole, place to play MLB games up until right at the end. And after the first year or so on the market, had the Call of Duty marketing agreement. So, it's just this fact that you're seeing it's more so the name than the product in a sense, like of exclusivity for the content. It's more so just having that association for the content, that they don't need to go out there and push that. People are already they're cool with people on Microsoft playing this game because they're already the home of that. Just like Microsoft wanted to buy Call of Duty or Activision for different reasons, because now for the longest time, PlayStation was quote unquote. That's why really Sony didn't need a shooter. You never saw them really pushing for a response shooter to, where Xbox had Gears of War, Gears of War, Halo, and a couple of others where you look at PlayStation for the longest time, they didn't need that. They didn't need their quote unquote Halo killer like they did the previous generation, because realistically, they were the home for Call of Duty. Like, PlayStation was it. The PlayStation had the marketing rights. PlayStation was able to get the, limited edition consoles and the limited edition content that's coming on, previously, the timed content and whatnot. People were buying PlayStations to play Call of Duty, and people were buying Xboxes as well, but at a much higher rate, people were playing PlayStation. So they didn't need to do that. Just like now, where Microsoft's buying that, Microsoft can buy to be the home of Call of Duty, where, like we kind of talked about, hey, the mainline Call of Duty campaigns and standard multiplayer, that may go exclusive to Microsoft, where Warzone probably isn't. They're still going to have a home for Call of Duty in some fashion on PlayStation and whatever else platform you could think of that Call of Duty will eventually be on. Warzone will still be there, or their free-to-play version, because that just pit is so fucking huge, where, it makes sense for you to go exclusively that route, to pay $70 billion to not stay the same and do something with that. So it's really interesting, this whole dynamic that's going on. And just kind of number-wise, you kind of brought up a really good point, Mike, about, what does this mean for other companies? What does this mean as consolidation becomes more and more just the norm, realistically, the norm of gaming moving forward, when realistically a year ago, we all just thought it's weird to see, not necessarily in a good or bad way, but it's weird to see Xbox have, it's the Xbox and Bethesda E3 briefing. Like, that's a thing now, where now it's probably just going to be the Xbox briefing again, like, where you'll see all of these companies under there. But it's interesting to see now, like a year later, that this is becoming the norm. And just kind of running through numbers wise, like I said, this is in terms of gaming revenue. So when I say this, obviously we have Tencent that had, in terms of revenue last year, was 8.2. Well, I think this is for actually 2020. Yeah, because that data wouldn't be out yet. So yeah, 2020. Tencent had almost $8.3 billion in revenue. They were the number one. Sony at number two with $4.342 billion. Apple right after, and then Microsoft at 2.8, almost $2.9 billion. But when you start to go down the chain a little bit, you kind of see where it kind of says more so where some of these pieces could fall comparatively. So that's why you have these the Activision Blizzard deal. When you look at that, they almost had $2 billion worth of revenue in 2020. That's huge. That is a big fucking, that is much bigger in terms of the grand scale of things, because that is the sole thing they do, is make gaming software. Nintendo right behind them. But then you get into the EAs, the Take-Twos, Bandai is even after that. Like, that's a little different. When we get past Nintendo and Activision, Blizzard, and even I would say EA, where EA had almost $2 billion worth of revenue after that. When you get down to it, that's where you see, I don't think it's that unfathomable at this point, after what we've seen, to think a Ubisoft could be out there. Because we're talking about Ubisoft almost making just a fourth of what Activision Blizzard in terms of revenue did, at $517 million in 2020. And Warner Brothers right after that, 403. That's at least Warner Brothers, the gaming division of that. But it kind of you hear a lot of rumors about, who's next. Konami's another name that's always thrown out there. Sega's another name that's thrown out there. Those are both in that kind of range of 400 to 500 to 600 million, where those deals don't necessarily seem too crazy. Actually, this is based on Q3 of 2021. There we go. I was going to say, there's no way that was for the full year yet, but so it's going to be more than that at the end of the day. But it kind of gives you an idea of where, when you say a Ubisoft, that's somebody who, granted, given all of their issues as well that come from sexual harassment and, the logistics of how they're running and the things from a human resources side that they've faced, and with all the shitty people that have done shitty things in their side of, in their company, is that another move that seems that could potentially be in the works already that we, don't know about? Because that might be one of those that, hey, Microsoft maybe picked up the phone for them. Who knows? That was, what came up with Activision, for, a whole year beforehand, whenever all this shit was coming out, like, it made sense. Like that one of their things was they wanted to, is this a time to sell? Is this a time to try to spin this in some way, which is shitty to think about, but doing a multi-billion-dollar deal will do it. But it's interesting to kind of just to think about it. And Bandai's another one that I never really thought of, that they had $800 million in revenue so far in 2021 that's accounted for. But I couldn't see Bandai necessarily being that, because I don't know if, now I'm just curious and I'm rambling, but I don't know if From Software is owned by Bandai. I know they publish a lot of their games, obviously. I don't know if they are technically independent or not. They're a subsidiary of the Kadokawa Corporation. I hope I'm not butchering that too much. Just trying to see what entities they have within that. Yeah, it doesn't really say. So they must just be a publishing deal overall. But I could see that more going to, hey, a Sony or a Microsoft would acquire From Software comparatively. Then, hey, we're going to go outright buy Bandai or something like that. But this keeps the door open really for a lot of interesting kind of scenarios to pop up in gaming and to pop up, just how the industry reacts to this. Let's kind of put on our tinfoil hats here for a second, Mike. Let's look long term. And we kind of thought, and we kind of take this in chunks a little bit. I think when we're kind of looking at, when I think of Bungie, I think of, realistically, they have like chapters in their history so much, and a lot of places do, but much more with, there was obviously the pre-Microsoft days of, being, Halo being a third-person action game that also, or third-person shooter that also before that was going to be a strategy game that was coming to the to Apple's platforms, specifically on Mac. Not to mention Marathon before that, but going from that to then the Microsoft deal in the Halo era to then the post-Halo era into Destiny, then into the post-Activision era to now. Let's look like 5 years down the road. What do you see? Where do you see, I guess, Destiny being right now? Or not Destiny, but Bungie in general being right now. Do we see this deal playing out like so many people think it's going to be with how it looks right now on paper? Because right now on paper, it looks like this is probably one of the most consumer-friendly deals we've seen in a while. That I think it's hard to really pick and choose or pick apart this deal and say, yeah, consolidation is a worry for a lot of gaming. But as a consumer, as somebody who plays Destiny 2, this doesn't make me that upset. Like, this isn't something that I'm like, fuck. As somebody who, granted, plays on everything, but I have an Xbox show. Of course, I love Xbox. If I played Destiny 2 on my Xbox, if this deal happened, if this was right around the the Activision publishing deal, and was much more of a, hey, I know we're getting exclusive content, I know this and that, like on PlayStation, yeah, I'd be a little more upset. But if I'm somebody whose primary gaming outlet is an Xbox, or, hardware choice is an Xbox, and I play a lot of Destiny on it and whatnot, I'm not too worried about this. What do you think long term? Like, or let's go short term first. Within the next 5 years, how do you think we look at this deal right now?
I just think it's going to wind up being one where you're going to have, because they do it all the time with Call of Duty. That's the reason. That's like my proof for this opinion. Not that I need to prove anything to any of you out there. Fuck all y'all. But seriously, on the low, I'm a big troll, so don't take that seriously. But on the real, I think you're just going to get exclusive content to PlayStation. It's going to come out like a month earlier on PlayStation. It's going to be the biggest thing with Destiny in particular. I think you're just going to see it where, this expansion pack is going to be out on PlayStation on this date. Xbox and PC can expect it on Y date. You know what I mean? I think that'll be the biggest immediate impact anyway.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I could see that happening. And as of right now, I mean, that's almost and it's very akin to, like I said, the Activision Blizzard deal, where there were deals obviously in place a lot earlier than what we're looking at now, where somebody signed some kind of exclusivity deal or something like that, like we've seen with, hey, Microsoft, Phil coming out and saying for Microsoft, hey, we're honoring the deals that are already in place. If there's exclusivity deals and exclusive content on Sony that we now own, we're honoring those deals if it came from, a pre-acquisition of ours. We're cool with that. And Sony seems like they're doing the same thing too. To me, though, I look at this deal as it's going to be more than Destiny. I think Destiny is honestly just like, Destiny's just kind of like the cherry on top with this. The big thing for Sony that I think they're wanting to get, and I even think to a degree we're going to see that with Microsoft as well, where, yeah, with the Activision deal, with the Bethesda deal and Blizzard deal, you have access to all these games now. You could make them exclusive, yada yada. You have all these IP. The big thing is this is more content to Game Pass. That's what their plan is right now. Is, hey, we want people to get into our ecosystem. Game Pass, we believe, is the future of doing that. We need content. And what's better than to be able to just say, we have this content, and it just so happens to be all of these huge IP that you play. Well, guess what? You can get in for $1 for 3 months by, if you're new to Game Pass, you could do that now and you can play all your games right from there. You don't have to worry about making sure you buy the newest expansion for World of Warcraft or whatever. It's going to be right here. You're all good. We got it covered with Game Pass. That's why they're making these acquisitions. It's no surprise that Sony comes out when they're talking about their wrap up. I believe it was their Q4 earnings call that they had recently, right after, I think it was yesterday, that they come out and say, we plan on launching 10 live service games by 2026. Like, that is why they did this deal. Because when you look at Bungie, for the past 10 years almost now, what are they known for? They're known for live service games and being one of the, biggest supporters and titans in the live service field, and that's what Sony wants. Sony wants its own Fortnite. I mean, just like Microsoft wants their own version. I'm sure they're going to want their own live service version of a game out there soon enough, but their version of a Fortnite right now is Game Pass. Like, that is their vision right now, where Sony already has the people in on their platform. They want the infrastructure to make that happen on a large scale. They want that infrastructure that they could have their own quote-unquote Fortnite, their living, breathing World of Warcraft or whatever that people buy a PlayStation for that isn't necessarily a third party or whatever. It is, boom, we have it, So it's no shock that comes out. Like, I think that's more so what we're going to see, because obviously within 5 years, we're going to have these supposed, at least theoretically, obviously we're going to have delays and whatnot, but theoretically, Sony should have those games out by then. So then we have 10 live service games. It's all built around bolstering. This helps Bungie at the end of the day with access to so many more multimedia avenues to get I'm sure a Destiny TV show, more comics or whatever. Like Sony has access to a lot of that on that end. Not to mention Sony's motion picture production company that's putting out Uncharted and whatnot now. So to me, that's the biggest thing we're going to see is, yeah, Destiny's still going to be running. Whatever the new IP is, that's obviously Sony wants to have a hand in that because they, I'm sure, know what they're working on at that point and understand, going into this deal, hey, we could see that being a big player in our future as well. To me, this just seems more of more of a back end deal than that's great. Destiny is going to be out there, than more so exclusive content and stuff like that. I'm not saying that I could absolutely still see that happening. I mean, we've been seeing it for how many years now? But does the industry trend in that way? It's tough to say because I think so many barriers are being lowered just to get people into gaming because so many people are interested in gaming right now that there's going to be a lot of money to be made long term of getting people into these subscription plans. But I don't know, man. It's just wild that this is all happening at the same time. I mean, and it's just kind of just circling back before, we wrap up and whatnot. It is not shocking whatsoever, to think that, remember previously when we heard about, obviously, the Bethesda deal, and we even kind of brought it up then, but more so the Activision deal, the Bungie deal now with Sony. There is no doubt in my mind the conversations were had. The rumors about Microsoft being interested in EA were absolutely fucking true. Yeah. I would not be shocked.
Especially with this all happening,
Right. I would not be shocked. This completely means anything can happen. That means that Konami...
You know what else I just thought of?
What's
2K
that?
Games, too.
Right. And that's what... And granted, 2K just bought Zynga, the mobile developer, or the big mobile developer of... all the what is it? What's the major one that they have? I can't remember.
Is that Candy Crush?
No, that's Microsoft now owns that. Which fuck, they did.
Go figure.
Just because Activision owned that was King or whatever. I think that's what it's called. What the fuck is their big mobile game that they're known for? I'm pulling it up now. Well, they have the new Star Wars game that's coming, but they have those games they're big on the the licensed games There's a Harry Potter puzzle game here. Here we go. Game of Thrones slot casino. Words with Friends. That's what I'm fucking thinking of. That's the one that I was thinking of. Granted, I haven't thought of fucking Words with Friends since Nom, but...
Since 2012.
Right. So, but anyways, I see this being more of a back-end deal, but there's no doubt in my mind that fucking... somebody made contact with somebody about EA, and it would be no doubt. I feel very confident saying, and Jeff Keighley saying, "Hey, there's rumors about even Jeff Grubb was talking about it, and people in the media with bigger media outlets have obviously heard things and rumors and whatnot but that's all they've heard. These deals are so much bigger than that, but there's no doubt in anybody's mind, period, that we could see if Microsoft acquired Sega tomorrow." Cool. Or realistically, Nintendo. I think if anybody's going to acquire Sega, it's going to be Nintendo. That I could see that just with how close of their partnership they've had for a long time now since Sega went, strictly software. That would not shock me at all if we saw their, Nintendo pick up Sega. But this is the fucking world we live in now, Mike. We're just maybe we can be acquired. Let's get the show acquired by somebody.
That'd be nice. Huh?
I don't know about you, Mike. I'm all for being a fucking sellout. I mean, let's fucking sell this to whoever. I don't fucking care. I'll put up. Hey, if Pornhub wants to be a sponsor on here, by all means, let's fucking talk.
Well, I don't know if they'll want to talk after I'm about to take a shot. I'm about to take the shot I'm about to take.
Okay.
But hey, man, since Barstool Sports wants to be painfully average. Borderline painfully average, potentially bad at everything.
Right.
Why don't they just pick up this terrible fucking podcast too? They might as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we all know how much money Dave Portnoy loves to just fucking lose, period. Like,
Yeah,
just fucking
I'll
light on fire and burn. So,
I'm so against it, but I'll move to fucking New York City today for that. Dude.
Right. If he wants to just, instead of, just being a paper-handed bitch in the stock market, he could be a paper-handed bitch with us and just give us like $1 million. And yeah, by all means. Like, to be quite honest, if he just wants to, like, if anybody wants to just pay my student loans, like, by all means, we'll pretty much be
it's
open
really
to about
not that
anything.
much for me. You probably are way less too.
I mean,
mine are like 37,000. That's it. I mean, I know that's it. Is like people from different countries probably hear that and are like,
mine's not much higher than that. But still, the fucking fact that
see, that's not that bad of a deal then.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, bro, just give us $100,000 and we'll be like, okay, cool, you got us. Yeah. I mean, because realistically, like, that's only going to help us in the long run. What the fuck are they making on? I'm all about, listen, it's like the Pittsburgh mindset of the casual sports fan. Let's just trade all of our bad players for their good ones. That's all we got to do.
Or, if you're a Penguins fan, you just love to try to trade a generational talent that even if Crosby wasn't on the team, Evgeny Malkin was like the second best, sometimes first best player in the league for a long, long time.
Right.
But people just want to run him out of town for no reason. That's the Yinzer way.
It's just somebody's got to make changes.
Yeah.
I love our city. Don't get me wrong. I love Pittsburgh, and always love.
You're not allowed to shit talk it if you're not from here. But as a fan,
but as somebody from Pittsburgh, I can't fucking stand Pittsburgh sports fans.
They wanted to trade Ben Roethlisberger. They want to trade Malkin. They want to trade Letang. I'm sure there's people out there that want to trade Crosby. We might as well get a return on him now. He's already getting old and slow.
Yeah, like Jesus Christ. I mean, I think the best thing, if you're a hockey fan, I think the easiest way to encapsulize Pittsburgh sports fans is anything negative happens. Oh, it's the goalie's fault.
Oh, yeah.
It's the goalie's fault. Just, you got to trade Fleury. Anytime Fleury, breathed in the wrong direction, get that fucking French-Canadian guy out of here. Like,
he's always smiling. What's he smiling about? He's giving up 8 goals a game to the Flyers.
Well, maybe
the defense in front of him giving up 2-on-1s all day, but shit.
Yeah, maybe he shouldn't have been down at the Children's Hospital donating all his time again. Should have been down at the practice rink working a little bit. Like,
that's such a fucking Pittsburgh thing. It's disgusting.
And that's talking sports this week on a video game podcast. There you go. Mike, I think that's going to do it for episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, talk about everything we talked about, all the shit about Bungie and consolidation and just everything. We're all going to be owned by Disney or Microsoft or Apple, so let's just get it over with now. Where can people talk to you about all of that on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier. But the second O is an X, or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
Nice. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms, including at Travelus_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travelus_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me, you can do so over on Xbox Live and pretty much any platform as Travelus, just regular old Travelus, TRAVLESS. No underscore.
Except for your PUBG account.
Right, because my PUBG account, PUBG and Origin, those are the two ones that technically isn't just Travelus. PUBG, my account got hacked, and it's now, for some reason, this guy, Barry Huthole. So he's, that name's on there somehow. I don't know how or why.
Some jokester just didn't even change the password.
Yeah, some two-timer out there did that. And then, what's Origin? Oh, Travelus was taken somehow, which I'm like, how is Travelus taken? Just like the guy on Twitter. How the fuck is Travelus taken on Twitter? Like, anyways, I digress. But yeah, Origin is not fake Travelus. That's what it is. So just like our friend Tanya had, it was not fake Tizzy. I couldn't think of anything else. But anyways, yes, just regular old Travelus on most stuff, except for PUBG and Origin. So there you go. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Game Pass, and of course, PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can find new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, and review us wherever you get a podcast at. And if we're not on there, let me know. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast to stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our dope giveaways. Mike, that's going to do it for episode this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors. Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.